Hi, I'm Lydia Gilman, and welcome to the Step Into Purpose podcast. In this episode, I have a beautiful conversation with Amanda Kernahan. Amanda has a podcast called Grief Trails, and she herself has experienced a lot of loss in her relatively short life. Amanda lost her mother to a heart attack at only 26 years old, and as you can imagine, that was just so unexpected and completely devastating. More recently, she also lost her brother, and this led her to one day just going through her mementos, her cards from this period of time, and realizing that, they were all sort of generic. The condolence cards were all sort of the same and not really personalized. So she really saw a wide open market to create really personalized gifts and cards which really epitomized the person who was being grieved. So she's created this beautiful heart-centered business, and really going through this terrible grief-stricken time in her life has really led her into her purpose, where she's making such a difference to people who are going through what is probably the hardest time in their lives. So it was so super inspiring, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Hi, Amanda. Welcome to the Step Into Purpose podcast. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So first of all, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what you do now. I know you've got a business and you've got a podcast as well.
Yeah, of course. I have a small business that I've had now for about a year and a half, and it's called RememberGrams. And it basically is a place where people can come and have custom cards made, personalized cards, and they're usually for the purpose of sending to someone who is grieving. And I also make grief support boxes and just really want to try and highlight and support and lift up people who are in that space where they're grieving for a loss that they've had, whether it be a person or a pet. And so I do that. I have a podcast also centered around grief called Grief Trails. And I also am writing a memoir, and I've been writing. I started with a blog on my website, and it has turned into just all sorts of writing. I have a first draft of my book done. And so just keeping busy with all sorts of different things, but all related to centering around grief.
Yeah. And was that from personal experience? Have you had quite a lot of experience with grief?
Yeah. So actually, I lost my mom in my 20s. It was very sudden. I was 26, and it was actually 4 days after my 26th birthday, and she died of a heart attack. She was young. She was only 47. And that loss was really, really hard for me. And then because of that loss, my youngest brother started using drugs. He was 15 when she died, and he was having a really, really hard time with her death. And he was struggling and sort of lost himself along the way and got involved in drugs and had a really, really hard time. And then 8 years after she died, he was doing a lot better. He was in like a long-term rehab program and was getting ready to come out for the summer. And he got his own place that summer. And then unfortunately, he died of an overdose. And that was in 2017, and he was 23 years old. So yeah, that was another sudden loss. And our family has just had a number of these kind of sudden, unexpected losses. And my dad's fiance died the year before my brother died, and that was sudden. And so just like, it's very jarring, and it seemed to keep appearing in my life. And prior to this, I was a sign language interpreter, and I still do that and worked at a hospital, but I just didn't feel like that same passion for that job anymore, and was really sort of trying to find myself and figure out, through the healing process, who I am at this point and what I want to do with my life. And I happened to be going through my home office, and I came across some boxes of sympathy cards from back when my mom died, back when my brother died. And I love to save sentimental things. And so I found those cards, and I just thought, they all look kind of the same. They all kind of say the same thing. And I thought, wow, it's really crazy that in, the year that we're in. This was back in 2021, but I thought it's crazy that we can't do a better job with the cards we send, and we can't make them more personal. And what I could envision at that time was, I thought I would have loved to get photos of my mom or my brother, along with memories that someone has of them. And so that's really what sparked the idea of starting my website and giving people a place to do that for others.
It's so amazing, isn't it? And I fully agree. They're very generic, sort of old-fashioned, stuffy, sort of in sympathy, and because people of all ages die. But I just have to say, I can't express my deepest condolences enough, because what a incredible, heartbreaking journey, especially when all of these people are so young. They haven't lived their full life, and it's kind of, it really feels like it was a message for you to live your life fully, to take these clues and live your life fully, because they were only half or a quarter lived, really, weren't they?
Right. And I do think that there is fulfillment in providing a different kind of authentic support to other people who are grieving. So, by the cards that I make, they're so personal, and it just makes me feel good to know that people are getting these in the mail, and they come in like a little gift box. And sometimes people will upload photos, and so we'll design it around the photo, or sometimes people will just tell me about the person, and then we design something around that concept. So like someone who loved to walk on the beach and collect seashells, like we'll do something around that theme. Or one person told me that the person who passed away really, really loved Halloween. And so we did this whole Halloween themed card, but it was really sweet. And then the person who ordered it sent me all of these messages that they got from the person who received it, who said, this was the most special card I've ever received. And it was the perfect representation of my mom. And so those are the stories that really inspire me to keep going and make me feel like this is the right path. But yeah, it's interesting how I started doing this, and I really had no idea what I was doing and what it would become. And little things have sort of been added along the way that kind of show me that this really is what I'm meant to be doing here. This really is all part of my purpose. And so I built my website, and I decided I would have a blog on the website because, it's supposed to help with bringing traffic to your website. And I had a lot I thought I could say. And so I started writing this blog and realized that I absolutely love writing. And then I actually joined a memoir course, and I started writing a memoir. And I have since then completed a whole first draft. I have an article that's going to be published tomorrow, actually, in a pretty well-known online magazine. And so it has just led me down this road that I never envisioned for myself, like starting a podcast, all of these things. And every little thing that I do going forward connects me with more people or more things that are down this journey that I didn't realize were there.
It's so beautiful, and it's really given me goosebumps and brought tears to my eyes, because this is what it means, doesn't it? Just to follow your purpose, to follow your heart. You just have to keep moving down the path, and it becomes clear, because who would ever expect these things, tragic things like that, to happen in your life? But you just kept getting up and walking forward, and now what a beautiful difference. This is how the world gets changed. I fully believe that if we all just in our own authentic experience and, energy, just follow those calls, and what you're doing to people who are going through probably the toughest time of their life, you're giving them comfort, you're giving them beauty, and I just can't think of a better thing. And you've got such a beautiful, sweet, loving energy as well. And that's enclosed in the cards. Also, because you're putting your heart into it, and you're designing it with the person. It's so beautiful. Thank you for doing that. Thank you so much for just following this, because it's everything. That's really what the world's about, I think.
Thank you. I think, what I've learned from my podcast, I've talked to a lot of people who've been through all sorts of different experiences that have to do with grief. And one of the really common threads that I find is that people feel like their life is kind of shattered at this moment when this happens. And then you have no choice but to really rebuild from that place of brokenness. And you often don't rebuild in the same way that you had prior. And you find these pieces of yourself, or you find these passions or things that you didn't even realize were there. And I've just talked to so many people who have come from this really dark, difficult place and built it into new businesses or a nonprofit or things that they never dreamed they would do. But here they are living this whole new life that they never knew. And it's not to say that, like, I would never say that I'm glad that any of this has happened. Yeah, obviously I would love to be able to go back and change the outcome for my family. But I'm also grateful for the places that this experience has brought me, and the healing and understanding. And I think I'm a more compassionate person, and I just see the world in a different way that I couldn't have prior to having any of that happen.
Yeah. And I do believe I believe that our soul kind of makes a choice of what lessons we need to learn before we, come to this human earthly planet, and these are the things which our soul needed to learn. And that's the only way I can make sense of what happens to people.
Yeah.
But what a hard thing to go through. Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. I think our souls, agree to whatever we're going to face in our lives prior to coming, and then we have to learn the lessons and do the work that we agreed to do. And so,
And
yeah.
And including your mother, her soul probably chose a shorter life, and how heartbreaking, at least with son, I guess, that, I think it would be perhaps more difficult. And so many younger mothers face cancer and things and have to know that they're leaving their children, either way is horrible. But I think at least when it's sudden, you don't have that heartbreak of sort of knowing that you're leaving. I think that's the hardest thing, wouldn't it be, leaving your beautiful children behind without a mother.
Yeah. I think it's all relative. It's all difficult in its own way. I wish that we had been able to have conversations prior, because it was so sudden. None of us had any idea that it was coming. So that's makes it a little more difficult in that respect. But yeah, I agree. I think, knowing who she was as a person, she wouldn't have wanted to have a slow decline at all. So yeah, maybe she chose that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. You're absolutely right. I think it is easier for those left behind to have that gradual.
Yeah.
As we say, you'd never wish it, but you picked up those pieces and you've made an amazing life. And I can just feel your compassionate energy, and you're making such a difference to the world and giving others comfort. That's the best thing.
And I would say that for people, if you're wondering, like, how do I know if this is my purpose, or I have an idea, but I'm just not sure? I think for me, it's just been, I've known because it's when I'm doing things that are related to my business, that are related to my podcast or my writing, I can completely lose track of time. I can lose myself in it, and it doesn't feel like I'm pushing, or, and not that there aren't difficult moments, because there are, but there's just this different energy to it. And when I'm in that energy, like, there's no way for me to deny that that's what I should be doing.
Yeah, you're just the vehicle to
Right.
this out in the world. Yeah.
Right. So just paying attention to, like, what are you doing when you feel completely lost in it? When I write, sometimes I'll finish writing and look back at it, and it's like you don't even remember writing all of that, but it's just coming through you. And so I think whatever you're doing that gives you that feeling is probably tied to your purpose. I actually heard an interesting podcast talking about purpose, and it was interesting because the host, I forgot who it was, he's a pretty famous guy, but he said that our purpose is pre-wired into us when we're children, and that it doesn't change. And I originally was like, I disagree, because, everything I'm doing is centered around grief, and like that's got to be my purpose. And that didn't happen to me until I was later. But then when I really listened to what he was saying and drilled down on it, it's more about, I think my purpose is more about like providing validation to others and being in service and helping others through an experience. And that is something I've done since I was little. So I think really just like examining who you were growing up, and like what have you been through, and what do you lean towards in your life. And that also can give you kind of a hint at what your purpose is.
Yes, because things unfold, our experiences unfold and might shift things slightly, and due to what's coming up in the world at that time. But yeah, our essence is that essence of
Yes.
I can see your energy. I can see in kindergarten or something, if someone had a bad experience, I can see you as the beautiful friend who is helping them understand it and get through it. Isn't that so true? I love that way.
Yeah.
You've articulated that, because it's so true.
Yeah, it's fascinating when you start to really think about it and connect the dots that have maybe been there, but you haven't taken a closer look at them and how everything relates to each other.
And often it's only in hindsight that you can do it. And that's sometimes the hard part. And so it's really about, just getting curious and trying things out. And often things which you were drawn to as a child, to go back to those and say, oh, I really enjoyed this. And then your analytical brain takes over when you reach a certain age. You go, oh, there's no point, or there's no money in this, or whatever, when you're a young adult.
That's an important point, is that there will, no matter, even if you are following your purpose, I think there will definitely be doubts along the way and challenges and roadblocks. And if you let yourself listen to that, then you won't move forward in the way that you want to. That has been a learning point for me, is just knowing that it is a little bit of a roller coaster, and there are days when like you feel on top of the world, and then there are days when you just think nothing is working, and maybe this isn't right, maybe this isn't what I meant to do. But trust that, whatever your gut is telling you and whatever you really believe deep down, that it probably is the right thing. You just have to push through the harder times.
And just keep moving, isn't it? It's just not staying stuck. And that's something which I need to remember as well. And sometimes, again, procrastination or whatever, you just have to keep moving. And sometimes we do go off course a little bit, but then we come back to that center place again and keep moving through. So yeah, that's a beautiful, a beautiful point, that it's not always easy, but it's just flow, and it doesn't feel like work. I can imagine when you're in that space, just writing, that it just comes out of you, because you're just the vehicle. You're the person who needs to share this message with people going through that hard time. And what a beautiful, I can't think of a lovelier energy to be, with people at that time. So thank goodness you did follow that.
And you make a good point saying you just have to like take one step in front of the other and keep moving forward. Because when I was really stuck after my mom died, I was really in a dark place, and someone invited me on a hike in the mountains, and I had never hiked before ever, but I agreed to go, and it changed my life. And now I'm an avid hiker. I love to be in the woods. I love to go to the mountains. My husband and I have now climbed all 46 of the highest mountains in our state. It took us 10 years to do. It was like a really big deal for us, but hiking has been really healing for me. And I find that to be like a really beautiful metaphor for life. Sometimes it is, it takes 12 hours to do a long hike, and you're exhausted, and, you just have to like focus on the next step and make sure you're not tripping over a rock or a root. And like, you can't think so far ahead because it's overwhelming. So you take like step by step, and you eventually get to the top, and then you have to come back down. And I find that to be like a really beautiful metaphor. And that's actually what inspired the name of my podcast is Grief Trails, because I think about it like you're being on this trail, and, you have to see where the path takes you, and you have to take it one step at a time. And so I like that you said that, because I really relate to it.
That's beautiful. I love that as a metaphor. And it's saying yes as well, isn't it? It's finding that little piece in you which goes, it's probably the last thing you felt like doing. You just want to stay stuck sometimes and just have the covers over your head and just not even do anything, but something in you said yes, and that's what it takes, doesn't it, to really change your life. We have to put in a little bit of effort, and you know, say yes, but then I mean the grace which comes so much, you know, from that little piece of effort is huge. So it's always it's like the two wings of the bird, isn't it? A little bit of self-effort. You have to sit yourself down at your computer, you know, make sure it's plugged in and things, and then whoosh, it flows out of you.
Yeah, you have to say yes, even when it's scary and even when it's hard.
And you've got, you're out there in the media and on podcasts, and you've got a book. I mean, it's amazing. And you couldn't, I mean, how could you ever know that this is where your life would take you? You couldn't know, but.
No, I mean, yeah, it's really incredible to think about, because I think so many people look at others who've gotten to like a certain point and you think like, well, they just got lucky, or, you know, who knows? But really, it's just about being resilient and being consistent, I think. And the more you take, I mean, every small step is going to lead you closer to where you're trying to go, even if you don't know where that is.
Yes,
So,
and often we don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's exciting to see it all start to come together. And I really think anyone can get to like wherever they want to be. It's just a matter of having faith and putting in the work.
And just tuning in, isn't it? It's just very finely tuning into that place, and you know, and just saying yes, and we're led, because I mean, often the reality of the potential of what can come to us is beyond what our limited mind can think. So it's just saying yes. And this is so, I mean, it's so needed, especially in this time. I mean, who could have predicted that, you know, in 2023, here we are, and we're post-COVID, and it's been, I mean, it's a crazy time in the world. And this is what people, a lot of people are dying, you know, just from different things with COVID. So many people were lost. So 2-3 years down the track, I mean, I'm sure it's still a huge journey if you've lost someone close to you, you know, years down the track. And I can't really think of many other people who are in the media talking about this stuff and bringing comfort. So you're the perfect person. It's like all along, this was here for you, but we could never have imagined. So yeah, everything happens in the right time. You know,
right?
It's divine timing, and this is the time.
Yeah, I agree.
So
you never know.
It's
usually, I mean, I think whatever you're imagining for yourself, I don't think you'll necessarily get that, but you might get something even better.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yes, who knows? And it's just having the faith and showing up. It's amazing. I love that grief trails, you know, because yeah, it must be a long journey, you know, years down the track. You know, these things are always with us, you know, and to hear stories about it. Do you interview on your podcast people who are going through that?
Yes, I interview people. Usually they're a few years out from whatever happened. But I mean, I've interviewed some people where it's been closer within like the last year, and some people where it's been 20 years. But that's the thing about grief, is it's very universal. Everyone is going to go through it at some point. If you haven't yet, you probably will. And it's unavoidable. And it's also just not that talked about, which is ironic because it is so universal and it does happen to everyone. And it's both like unique and personal for you, but there are people who can relate to you. So I'm just trying to share those stories so that people can hear about, you know, someone else who went through something similar and find comfort in that.
I mean, isn't that so true when you look at the two surest things in life, birth and death? I mean, they're the two pivotal points in life, you know, and the surest things which are going to happen. And you look at the media and the marketplace, I mean, just everywhere, it's all about birth and pregnancy. And I know that's something to be celebrated, and it is a harder thing, that grief in losing someone. But I mean, I think that's starting to shift I mean, it's not saying to shift, but to some extent there are different perspectives, and it's just like a transition, you know, it's a transition and there's nothing sure. But I think, yeah, it's still got that stigma because it's so painful. I guess the joy is in the birth and the death is still so painful. So you're shining a light, a beautiful light, I think. And I used to be terrified of death as a child. I'm not sure. I mean, yeah, I'm not exactly sure why, but I was quite traumatized. My parents nearly died in a car accident a few years before I was born. So they talked about that quite a lot, how lucky they were that they didn't. And it just was, I think, a fear thing for me, that a trauma really, that it might happen again, or not knowing when it might happen. So I was really fearful of death. And then it was in my 20s, I think, when I got more involved in spirituality, that I really, that fear of death went away. And I think when your own family died, when you lose someone, I think that's a different thing, because that's so hard. But realizing that, I think when you die, you're fine. You know, I've seen so many things about near-death experiences and just accounts like that, that I think you're fine when you die. I think, you know, I've heard things, people just whoosh, suddenly they're released into this amazing, you know, light and ecstasy. And so I think that makes it easier to some extent, that you think, well, your loved one, your parent or something, you don't want to lose them, but they'll be fine. It does make it easier, you know, and they'll be there with you in other ways. And it's just, they've moved on to the next stage, and who knows what that is. But I think that's made it a lot easier for me, and it's taken a lot of the fear of death away from me as well. But yeah, it's really an area which needs that light cast on it, you know, and yeah, perfect that you're the one to do it. It's so good.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride since I started.
Yeah. So what has your timeline been since going into this?
So I had the idea for my website in January of 2021. I launched in August of 2021. So it's been about 18 months since I've had the website. And then I just launched my podcast this past January. So that's pretty new, but that's going well. I finished my first draft of my memoir in December or January. So I've been working hard on that, and we'll be looking to find an agent soon and everything. So yeah, I mean, it's all pretty new, actually. It's all within the last 2 years, but
fast, hasn't it? But it's all in divine timing. I mean, when you look at the world events, it's all happened at the right time. So everything was leading you up to this point.
exactly.
Yeah, I love that. It just gives me so much inspiration, and it just makes you realize that, you know, what we're doing now, and sometimes when things haven't come to this fruition where you see all the pieces coming together, but just to stay in it and to keep with it, because things do reveal themselves. If you feel that alignment and that pull towards something, I mean, it all reveals itself. Like the flower, you know, the bud, it opens just at the right time, and you can't force it. And it wouldn't have been the right time in 2018.
I'll say you definitely can't force it. There have been times that, you know, where I've been really discouraged because, you know, things aren't happening fast enough, or, you know, you expect something to go a certain way, and you definitely can't force it. Unfortunately, you just have to be willing to ride it out and believe that this is the right thing and keep moving forward, because
yeah,
it'll happen when it's supposed to happen, I suppose.
Well, I'm so thrilled to meet you and to really hear about this journey. It's really moved me very deeply, actually. And it's just illustrated what this podcast and what my whole why really is about this. This is just what, if everyone does this in their own small or big way, stays in their own lane and follows their own purpose.
Right. And for people to recognize that it doesn't matter how old you are, or that like you're in another career. I don't think any of that matters. You know, I'm going to be turning 40 this summer, and I have my first publication coming out soon. So I think it'll all happen when it's supposed to. Don't worry about age and timing and all of that.
I agree. And you gave me a sense of your timeline when you said you were 26, but you look so youthful. And I mean, I'll be the end of next year, I'll be 50. So it's the same again. I'm a late bloomer, I think, but it's all for a reason, you know, and I'm probably only halfway, you know, into my life if I get to live a long, you know, full life. And this sort of thing isn't what you retire from. I mean, that's the difference, isn't it? I think you just keep doing this because it doesn't even feel like work. It's just what you do, and you lose yourself in it. And how sad if you go, oh no, I'm turning 65 now, I'm gonna not write anymore, I'm not gonna do my podcast anymore. I mean, how ridiculous. It just seems ridiculous, but that's the model we've been given through our life. So tell people how they can find you and also your podcast.
The website is www.remembergrams.com. And you can find me on Facebook or Instagram. Both are at RememberGrams. And my podcast is called Grief Trails. And the link for that is all linked in my social media pages for RememberGrams. And so you can just find me on social media there, and you should find a link, or you can just type in Grief Trails to like any podcast platform and find it there.
So wonderful. And your energy is just so beautiful. And so it's just really been such a joy to meet
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's really lit up my day. And I will link all those in the show notes as well. So thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you. It's so wonderful talking to you and meeting you.
Thank you so much for listening. To find out more about Amanda's work, you can check out her website, RememberGrams.com, or follow along on Instagram at RememberGrams. And I'll put the links in the show notes below. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and consider sharing with a friend who this might be helpful for. Thanks again.